Oh, what a professional.
Look at this.
What a professional. Hello and welcome to the Claret and Blue podcast. Something a little bit different for you today. We're going to do some bite-sized transfer-related content at Hockley Social Club, the venue for our live event, which are our tickets in the link down below. You'll be there, won't you, for that one?
I'm there, yeah, have a few beers. Always allow a little bit more information when I've had a few beers, as people that went to the last Claret and Blue show
I have to edit out from the version.
It never makes it, never makes the cut. But the people that are live there, they hear what I say.
They enjoy it, yeah. The topic I wanted to bring to the table today was Onana and Maatsen as the starting point. That I remember doing Q&As earlier in the season about should we be questioning Monchi? What was the transfer business in the summer like? Were these players duds? Did we waste our money? To now in recent weeks are like, well, Maatsen's pretty good and Onana's pretty good, and why aren't they in the team when they're not in the team? And I think firstly it's a bit of a lesson of like these things take time, especially under a coach like Emery. And I think we spent 80 odd million on both of them, 50 and 30 something. They're not worth that at the moment in terms of the performances they put in this season. However, they might be worth that next season, and they might be worth more than that the year after in this kind of PSR cycle that we sell Onana for 70 or Maatsen for 55 or whatever. So it's a bit of a lesson in patience, but also that this is what we see under Emery, like the Tielemans effect. You sign a player now, but they kind of come into their own the year after.
Yeah, I think at the start of last season, people would have said Tielemans isn't worth being one of the highest paid players at the club. Obviously, he came on a Bosman, so he's on. Quite
I don't hear that very often anymore.
I still call it because Bosman came in when I was young, so I still call it a Bosman. But he obviously commands a higher wage, a higher signing on fee because he's come on a free transfer. That's how it works. If you look back at the summer, I think there's probably a few regrets from that summer window. Not necessarily Onana and Maatsen, but obviously Philogene didn't work. We couldn't wangle it so that we got Gertruda in. He ended up going to Leipzig, so we couldn't get him in like we wanted to. So we didn't really upgrade that position in the summer window. Was Philogene a good replacement for Diaby? Probably. Well, no, not even probably not. Definitely not. So I think there'll be some regrets from that summer window. I think they then rectified that in January really, really well. I think if we'd have had this squad that we've got now the whole way through the season, we'd be talking about not us chasing Champions League. We're talking about us just trying to cement it.
I think we'd probably be second
over the last couple of games. Yeah, we might even be second with the way Arsenal have got now. Yeah, we're not a million miles away, are we at all? So I like that they rectified it because you're not going to get everything right in transfer windows. On Maatsen and Onana, I think Maatsen, I know that they've been doing a lot of work with him behind the scenes on his body positioning and his defending, and I think we can all say that there's been an improvement from the defensive side. Attacking wise, I think he's always been quite good. He's a player I really, really liked, and I was really, really pleased when we signed him.
I remember John saying on international duty, the last international break, that Maatsen scored his first goal for the Netherlands, and it was like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And John was like, yeah, but we kind of knew that anyway. Like we didn't learn anything new. That Maatsen's good going forward.
Yeah.
What we want to see in his game is improvement the other way.
And that's what's happened. And then you've got Onana, who obviously 50 million is a lot of money. Technically the replacement for Douglas Luiz, although we've probably ended up replacing Dougie from within with Yuri Tielemans, which I'm sure we'll come on to that contingency kind of thing with Villa. Has he been worth 50 million so far? No, probably not. I think if you're spending 50 million on a central midfielder, you probably want him to be in your best 11. I know best 11 is not really a thing, but
you'd expect him to start
if most Villa fans were to pick their best 11, I'm wagering Onana wouldn't be in maybe 70-80% of those 11s. But then he was brilliant against Bournemouth at the weekend. So you got to give players time. Players acclimatise at different rates, and we've seen with Tielemans second season. I always think that's when you can properly judge a player. Yeah,
I was trying to think before we started how many players come in under Unai and start straight away or be involved straight away, and there's Rodgers, Moreno last year or the year before.
Even Rodgers, though, that wasn't the plan. We just had loads of injuries. I think he'd have been bedded in a bit slower. Diaby came in and hit the ground running, but then he actually hit the ground running and then fell away in the second half of the season.
Torres is obviously an Emery favourite, but even Mings started against Newcastle and got injured. So, would we have seen Torres come in on game week 10 or 11? Obviously we won't know. So I think the kind of come in, learn what we want you to do properly, and then you'll start to see a run in the team is quite likely. I think there's a pretty obvious succession plan or a getting into the first team for Maatsen. whether Dean goes or stays. I think Maatsen is first choice next year. It'd be foolish not to be, I think.
I don't even think that's the first choice is the thing. I've really enjoyed the fact at left back this season that we've had those different options for different games, especially more recently now. You know, we play Luca Dean away at Bournemouth. You know, Newcastle at home, and we're going to attack and we're going to go at them. We play Maatsen. I quite like that we've got that variety, and actually that's something that we don't have on the other side. And I think that's what they'll look to do in the summer, is to be able to replicate what they've got on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, Luca Dean might go. I think he'll see out another year at Villa personally. But then you've got to buy another left-back. Because I don't think Moreno's going to come back and be that left-back. I wouldn't have thought. So you've then got to buy another left-back, and then you've then got the same issue of getting them into it, bedding them in. They've got to get used to what we do. I quite like that we've had two left-backs that are slightly different, but that we have been able to change it up. And I think in the second half of the season, or the last third of the season, when we've won 8 from 10, we've actually reaped the benefits of having that option.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I just don't know whether you can afford to carry Dean's wages for another year and then his contract.
I think if you qualify for the Champions League, you probably. I think if he goes on a free, look, sometimes someone could go on a free and he's in his 30s, and you think, well, actually, that was he's a good signing. Quite happy for him to go on a free and his wages go off the books. I think sometimes, not like Trent at Liverpool. Obviously, you don't want him to go on a free. He's 26, but I think sometimes you can get 4 or 5 years out of a player. They've run their contract down. Okay, look at him, probably cost a little bit too much in the Gerrard era. Was probably paid a little bit too much in the Gerrard era as well. But I think overall, you look at that now and say, if someone leaves for a free at the end of that, we've done all right out of it, and he's done all right out of it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What about Onana then? What does that midfield look like next year? I mean, there's probably a massive kind of elephant in the room that what happens with Kamara. Yeah. If he was to leave, then Onana would be starting games, I think next to Tielemans, and that's your midfield. And if that is almost the plan,
that's how we started the season.
You bring him in early, Kamara leaves, Onana is your replacement next year, and you've kind of, if it was this year that Kamara went and Onana was signed and he has to start 38 games next year in an Emery team, that would concern me a little bit. Not because of who Onana is, just you're thrown into the deep end, deal with it. If Onana has to start every game next year, you know, generally speaking, well, he's had a year to bed in and learn Emery's ways and things like that. So if Kamara was to go, that makes sense. If Kamara stays, what does that look like for Onana? Because you're spending this money on this player just to play a big part. Is that where we are now?
What we've done is, you've got to have players that can play. To build a squad, you've got to have players that can play different roles. So if you look at McGinn, if McGinn only played one position, then he's going to get less game time, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because he can play in different positions, he plays quite a lot. Tielemans can play as a 6, but he's also played games at a 10. Rodgers has played everywhere across that front three. Villa have concentrated heavily, I think by design, on getting in multifunctional players that can do lots of different things in lots of different roles, which has meant that stereotypically we've got maybe a slightly smaller squad, only slightly, than the stereotypical big 6, because we've got those players that can fill in different roles. Even someone like Lamar Bogard, you look how many different positions he's played this season, and he's an interesting one for next season as well. I think he'll end up being a casualty of PSR, and he signed the contract to protect himself. But Villa have got maybe 5 or 6 players that can play in all these different roles. So just because, let's say, Tielemans and Kamara are still there, if Onana's fit, he will play a lot of games, because there'll be some games in the Champions League if we qualify, or the Europa League, where Tielemans plays as a number 10. That's another interesting thing with Villa this summer. At the time of recording, we don't know what tournament we're going to be in. If we're in the Champions League, the squad will be built in the summer in a different way than what it will if we're in the Europa League, because you'll probably see if we qualify for the Europa League, you might see 1 or 2 less in the squad, and you've got academy players come through, but you won't get that in the Champions League.
This is a very similar conversation we probably had, 6 or 7 years ago about, well, if we get promoted, we're going to sign this batch of players, and if we stay in the Championship, then you've got to have a plan for both. Is there a case to suggest a best 11, which, like you say, doesn't really exist, has Kamara and Onana, Tielemans further forward in the middle, and Rodgers on the left? Is that the best way to get all of them in there?
Maybe next season. I think at the moment we've got so many players that can play off that front position that are high quality players. I think you're almost taking one of them, another one out if you play Tielemans there. I think at the moment, if you pick our best team, personally, if I'm picking a team for a cup final tomorrow, which I wish we were, you've got Tielemans and Kamara, the 2 6s. That's just the way it is. And then Rodgers is a lock somewhere. I think in a final, McGinn would be a lock somewhere. And then you're choosing between Asensio, Ramsey, and then Rodgers fits in wherever the person that comes in isn't playing.
So just to round up this little video then, I think the kind of messages from my point of view, I'm sure you agree, that it's not necessarily about you sign someone now and they've got to hit the ground running straight away, and if they don't, it's a poor sign, and what's Monch up to, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's, we signed Onana for a 5-year contract, I presume. We want to see out that time, and he's here for that period, and it's not just about judging him after the first 6 months and he's a glorified cheerleader and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just so early to judge, specifically under Emery. And what we've seen with the likes of Tielemans is just a bit of patience, and maybe we'll see the best of these players and big key players next season.
Yeah, and signings are made for different purposes and different reasons as well. We signed Ross Barkley in the summer, knowing full well that he wasn't going to start every game.
Yeah.
But actually, before his injury, I'd say he was doing really, really well and was actually probably outperforming his role. Realistically, he scored a fair few important goals as well, didn't he, Barkley?
You'd probably say he was a more effective signing than Onana.
Yeah, I think he was probably ahead of Onana at one point, but now he's probably back behind him again. But I think signings work in different ways. I don't for 1 minute think Villa spent 50 million on Onana and thought he's going to be our third choice central midfielder. But things change and stories develop as the season goes on. So I think probably the key.
Maybe didn't expect Tielemans to be this good either.
No, he probably didn't. He probably knew he was starting the season with Tielemans and Onana, but then he maybe thought Kamara was coming in for Tielemans. But things change and evolve as the season goes on. But I think the key message is that Maatsen, Onana, and probably you can chuck Marlon in there as well. I think they'll be really, really important players next season. Marlon getting a pre-season under his belt will be a plus as well. Maatsen's growing all the time, and Onana was probably our best player against Bournemouth. So don't be surprised if next season we start the season and all three of them are in the team and all three of them hit the ground running.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Dan, thanks for joining me at Hockley. We'll be back here in a couple of weeks, so get your tickets down below. They are free. We're doing a live Q&As, about 250 people coming so far, so there's not many tickets left. We'll be back tomorrow with a Spurs preview, so thank you for watching this one or listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.